I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values, our feelings, or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, a responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another live office hours stream. A little late tonight. It was up in the air whether or not it was going to happen. As you can hear, still getting over this mess. It's not COVID, actually. Thought it was. Senator Graver and I did some home tests today, and it's not that. But it was some kind of odd little flu. Again, I was over the most of it. Just this lingering head cold, and the fact that I still can't taste any food, which again is directly tied to my will to live. But hopefully that'll come around soon. So yeah, I didn't get a lot of sleep the last few nights, with my daughter and whatnot, but I was, catching up on work tonight and a little nap and everything, and thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't do the stream. No, I need to do the stream. People expect it. And I had something to say. I don't know how long it'll take me to say it. I also don't know exactly how long my voice will last. If you caught the book study stream last night, it did just kind of close up eventually. There was a couple times where I just stopped talking because I was like, I don't want to have a coughing, gagging fit, just because that tickle gets in your throat. And last night I had Al to talk a little bit and take the pressure off, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes this time. I do have a few things to say. First of all, let me welcome the chat. Let's see. Ghost Planet Max Inc. 1.0 was here first, as usual. My dear sound engraver. I'm her inimitable professor. I like that. Nathaniel's Lowsball, welcome. Eldritch Fan. Owen Lister, good to see you there. Electric Barbarella, Spidey Rules. Andre Hernandez, Stress Levels 99%. Divinital Kayan. Yeah, a little late tonight. Final Fantasy, welcome. Private Eye. Trustworthy Tim. Studio Super, good to see you. Good to see everybody there. And more, as we have here. So, I want to break into the topic here. This isn't a review of either film. I am going to do a review of Nefarious on my Catholic Bible Geek channel, so you can look for that to come in the next couple days. That's a freaking amazing movie. Oh my gosh, Nefarious just blew my mind. So I will give a thorough review of that. I haven't seen Sound of Freedom yet, and I know. Like, how can you not have seen it? Look, I want to see it. It's going to be hard for me to watch. It's going to be very hard for me to watch because I have a child, and I hate watching children in any kind of suffering ways like that. But I will watch it. I just didn't, it had a limited theatrical release, and the certain limited times that it was playing near me just didn't really match up with my schedule with my daughter and so forth, and just got out of the theaters before I was able to see it. But I think it'll probably be released on DVD somewhat soon, so I will buy it. I did go ahead and buy Nefarious. That was recently released on DVD, so I bought the Blu-ray of that, and wow. Now, Nefarious, obviously, these are two different films, even though they're two films. I don't want to call them Christian movies, because Christian movies implies that they're like, Left Behind, or the, something like the Calvary Chapel movie or something like that. These aren't movies that, and then it's about a person, and then at the end he kneels on his bed and he says the Jesus prayer and he invites the Lord to be his personal Lord and Savior, and everything's happy. And Christian movies are just they're not they're agenda driven. Even though it's an agenda I would agree with, they're agenda driven, and the story suffers for it. They just become quite lame because of that. So these aren't movies like Christian movies like that, but there were Christians behind them. There are important messages, and these movies aren't really for the weak hearted or weak stomached either, right? I haven't seen Sound of Freedom, as I said, but it deals with some really heavy, adult content. And I mean adult, like you should be an adult to really, witness some of this stuff, the horrors that go on with human trafficking and everything. Nefarious is I wouldn't call it a horror film. Some people call it a horror film. I'd call it a suspense horror, maybe suspense horror thriller. And the premise of it, for those who don't know, because Nefarious didn't get quite as much play in the mainstream as Sound of Freedom did. The mainstream media just kind of ignored Nefarious. But if you were interested at all, if you watched a lot of the Catholic radio shows and whatnot that I do, you've certainly heard about it. The premise of Nefarious is that a man's on death row. He's about to be executed that night, even, but he's presenting as though it's multiple personality or dissociative personality disorder or whatever its new name is. So they bring this psychologist in to either sign off on, yes, he's mentally stable and he can be executed, or no, he's not and he can't, because if you're mentally unstable, you can't be executed. And the psychologist meets this inmate and he says, I'm a demon. I've possessed this man. And it's a story about demonic possession. But the interesting thing about Nefarious is that it's not focused on, levitations and head spinning and all the kind of schlock, gore, horror, spectacles and anything like that. You really get into the demonic mind. It's not even necessarily about a priest trying to go against there's one priest in the movie, and this priest is the biggest joke in the world. He's totally ineffective, and he's sort of a commentary on the liberal, relativistic, enlightened mindset that creeps into the Catholic Church and all other churches out there. This priest comes in and is like, we ought not believe demons are literal. These are just metaphors, and then this and that, So it's really about this psychologist and this inmate, and it really gets into the demonic mind terrifyingly, but also in a way that really you're deeply moved by it. You're deeply moved for empathy and sympathy for this poor soul who is possessed and whatnot. And man, it really, I don't know. I'm still gathering all my thoughts for the review that I'm going to do on the Catholic Bible Geek channel, but I can't recommend the film enough. I do certainly recommend it. Let me get to the super chat here before I go any farther. Studio Super, thank you for $9.99. I appreciate that. Says, I don't plan on watching Sound of Freedom. I bet it's good. The subject matter is just a little too much for me. Look, before I get to the rest of your comment, I get it. I'm going to have to make myself watch it because I just think it's too important, but it's going to be really painful for me to watch it. I have a daughter. I can't handle watching children. It's the same thing. Like, I can't watch a movie where a dog gets beaten or something either, and before I had kids, I didn't really have that problem so much with kids, watching kids suffer, because it's fictional, it's whatever. Now that I'm a father, no, I can't handle it. So I get that. I'm going to have to make myself watch it though, because I think it's important, and I've heard great things, about the quality of it as well. But you said Nefarious, I haven't heard of. Is it scary? Is it a scary movie? I'm too paranoid for those. It's not a scary movie like, let me pull it out. I got the DVD here just so you can see it. It's not a scary movie. It's not a horror film. It's not something that's going to make you jump or anything like that. It's a suspense thriller. I'm trying to explain. If you don't believe in demons, if you don't think they're real, then it won't really do much to scare you, I don't think. It's the kind of scary that sets you straight, It was written and directed by Catholics. You don't need to be a Catholic to appreciate the film, though. You could be of any Christian persuasion or none. You don't have to have any kind of skin in the game of religion at all to enjoy the film. It's very well done. The writing, Neil Patrick Flannery, the guy who plays the possessed man, it's such a shame that this was sort of a small independent film, because he deserves an award. It's mind-boggling. Look up some clips on YouTube. They'll have clips. of his performance and where he goes from the demon to the soul being possessed. It's wow, it's amazing. Most movies that are made about possession are pretty awful, actually. They're sensationalized. They're nothing like the real deal. That horrible tragedy of a movie, The Pope's Exorcist, was garbage. That was an insult to Father Gabriel Morth, who was the actual priest they were basing that on. It was horrible. So most of them are pretty awful. I think The Exorcism of Emily Rose was quite good. I think The Exorcist itself is got more good than bad, though it does have some pretty silly things in it. In parts. But I would say The Exorcism of Emily Rose was quite good, and then Nefarious is just mind blowing. So I would recommend it. Um, it's not a horror, but it's like I said, it scares you straight. Let me finish that thought in a second. Let me get to Owen Lister super chat here, and I'll talk about, because I'm still kind of digging into my topic, and I'm going to explain what I mean by the title and what I mean by a cultural reflection on these in a second. Owen Lister, thank you, sir. Appreciate the super chat. Said, could this be a sign of Christian artists starting to get noticed more? Hopefully, more awesome art by Christians will get made because of movies like Sound of Freedom. I agree. I think that really needs to be the case. I think that for whatever reason, Christian filmmakers and Christian storytellers, whether this is, they're starting to come out and realize, hey, we can tell more stories about things other than a biblical story, which is great. If you do that well, that's wonderful. Not knocking those, they're done well, like Passion of the Christ or something like that. But you can tell more stories than just a biblical story, or just a story about somebody who finds Jesus. It's like those are quaint, those are agenda driven, and art is supposed to be so much more. Art's supposed to be on a more metaphorical level, quite often and whatnot. So I agree with you, Owen. I think that maybe this is a good sign. We can get away from the sort of Left Behinds or God's Not Dead type of films. I haven't seen the God's Not Dead type of films, so I don't know. If my mom likes it, I take that as a cue that I probably won't, because she's that kind of man. But maybe it's a sign of some better things to come. Studio Super says, with the subject matter, Nefarious would also be too much for me as well. I'm extremely paranoid with that type of stuff. I'm also a kind of guy that was scared of Hulk 2003 for the longest time. All right, yeah, maybe you shouldn't see Nefarious if you're scared of Hulk 2003. Dang, bro. But I get it. I get it. Leia Plus says, no, Nefarious isn't a thriller like Silence of the Lambs. There's no in fact, one of the cool things about it is I like movies like this that stick to the unity of time. So and in unity of place. It's very Aristotelian when it comes to the construction of the story. The psychologist goes there the day of the execution, and the story stays there in this little private room that he's able to interrogate or interview the inmate in this. That's, you don't go other places. You stay there at the prison until the end of the day. And I'm not going to give away anything that happens, but that's, so you're not following, you're not flashback to his killers, his murderers or whatever, it's nothing like the Buffalo Bill thing or anything like that. So no. And it's not like The Nun either. That was more horror, this is, it's just fascinating. Again, I'm trying to say some more things about it, but let me, when I say if it scares you, it's like a scares you straight kind of thing. I'm really interested in listening to interviews with exorcists, with some of the Catholic exorcists, the actual real deal, ordained or deputized by the bishops, in their diocese, exorcists. Not because I think it is definitely possible to have sort of an unhealthy fascination with this kind of thing. That's not what I have. Unhealthy fascination with something like this is people are just really fascinated. They like to be creeped out, and they're so interesting, and it's that kind of thing. That kind of fascination is sort of a seasonal thing you might experience at Halloween a little bit, but that's not what I'm talking about when I say I really enjoy listening to these exorcists and their interviews. I like listening to them because as a Christian, as a Catholic myself, and I know not everybody here is Catholic and not everybody here is Christian. That's fine. I'm just kind of giving you my own personal experience with this. It makes me more aware of the actual spiritual realm around us. And even if you're not a Christian, you don't believe necessarily in angels and demons, at least you hopefully, if you're listening to my channel, I can't imagine a relativist would find anything of interest in my channel. You would at least believe that there's absolute good and absolute evil in the world, and that these forces are vying for expression through our lives. So if I, as a Christian, as a Catholic Christian, I can take more seriously the work of Satan around me. It's not that, I mean, demonic possessions are very comparatively few, but every single day, every single one of us faces demonic temptation. We can face oppression at times. We can face demonic obsessions, putting thoughts in our heads and trying to get us, thinking and dwelling on certain things. These are all around, and the stories and the interviews and the knowledge gained about the spirit world and the spiritual battle that we're in every day. And again, even if you're not Christian, you can just at least see that as the battle between good and evil that you face every day. It makes me take it more seriously. And specifically as a Catholic, there are things that you do to protect yourself and protect your family. You listen to these. I particularly I like listening to interviews of a lot of the mainstream exorcists that have come out and kind of made themselves public as it. But there's a podcast on iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, or whatever it is. It's on the different places where you listen to your podcast. It's called The Exorcist Files, and it's run by, or the main guy behind it is Father Carlos Martin, or Father Carlos Martin. Yeah, Father Carlos Martins. It's a really slick, well done produced podcast, and he is it's a dramatization of a lot of his stories and files, and it goes through. It's kind of like watching a crime show on TV or whatever, like a City Confidential or something like that, where it tells you the story of what's happening, but it brings sort of experts in and talks about these certain things that it covers along the way, how curses work, how different things, how you know again, demonic possessions, full on actual demonic possessions are very rare, but the way a demon gets into your life is that they look for a series of yeses that you tell a demon. And this doesn't mean that or you're consciously thinking, okay, I'm saying yes to a demon. No. Father Chad Ripperger says that, when demons try to tempt us to commit sin, they start by trying to align our psychologies with theirs. And the more they can get us to commit certain sins knowingly, then the more we become numbed to the conscience about that sin. We become numb to it. It becomes easier for us to do. And we can't even see it as bad anymore. And that's our psychologies becoming more in line with them. And Father Chad Ripperger has a great way of explaining that, how he says that, if their ultimate goal is to possess you, if you can be one of those rare, people that actually get possessed, then you have to become a more conformed to them, a place to inhabit, psychologically. So it's terrifying. You think of that, and it makes it a little bit more, makes you take more seriously these little moral decisions you make throughout the day. In Nefarious, there's even a point where the psychologist is like, look, this is my life. I live it how I want, and giving all of the defenses that our modern day culture would, talking about, look, it's, there's talk about an abortion at one point. It's her body, it's her choice, this and that. And as he's saying it, the demon's just going, that's my boy, and it's so well written. Oh, it's so well written. Yeah, it's wow. But let me get to the super chat and I'll finish my point there. Studio Super, thanks for 99, says, I'm also a Catholic, and here's a serious story that's in the back of my mind where it involves a superhero society that I would take inspiration from Catholic society, certain rules it has and so on. That's interesting. If you haven't yet, look up Doug Ernst's, oh man, I'm sorry, Doug. Now I'm blanking on the name of your comic. He's got a couple of different editions out. Oh shoot, not Soul Blazer. I can't remember the name of your comic, Doug. I'm so sorry. Doug Ernst, Tim Lim did the art, but it's about an exorcist. It's about a priest who's an exorcist. It's pretty good. I'd recommend that too. But The Exorcist Files by Father Carlos Martin. If you're somebody that kind of likes watching watching crime dramas and stuff like that, you'd appreciate this podcast. It's very well produced. It's very slick. So listening to this kind of podcast, now Father Martin's actually said the reason why he started to do the Exorcist Files podcast is he said he came across these two studies, these two polls that were done, and one was done by Pew, and I forget who the other organization that did this other poll that was done, but they were done around the same time. And one of them said that I think there's I forget the numbers. I wrote it down, but I left it over across the room. But people aged like 19 to 29, it was this huge number. They're just increasingly not identifying as any religion, just becoming the nuns, so to speak, NONE. That's a new term that a lot of people are today, just rejecting any idea of religion, not necessarily even rejecting any idea of a God existence, but they're not going to be tied to any sort of religion. And then the other Pew, the other poll said that those people in that same demographic, 19 to 29-year-olds, it was like 50% of them, like it was a strong increase in them actually believed demonic possession was possible. And he said that's a real disconnect. We're having people leaving the church, not wanting anything to do with God or spirituality or whatever, and yet we're having an increase in people actually believing that demonic possession is possible. So believing in devils and demons, even if they don't believe in God. And it reminded me of something that a professor of mine said once, and that's where the title of the Office Hour stream comes from. This is my favorite professor. It was in my undergrad. He was a humanities professor, and he was just amazing. I took him for all of the coverage humanities courses. I took him for Shakespeare. I took him for a class on uh, philosophy and whatnot of God versus Darwin and all these other things and stuff. He was a fascinating professor. He wasn't a professing Christian per se, but he was a theist. He believed in God. And we were talking, I forget, we were talking about, Western culture and humanities and Western culture. And he says, mainstream society, they've pretty successfully killed off God. And what he meant by that, he didn't mean like they literally killed off God. He just meant that, you can't really, it's taboo to talk about God, on like the mainstream television, at least in any kind of way that counts, or that matters. If you bring up God, people get kind of uncomfortable and whatnot. He said, we've pretty much killed off God in culture in that respect. He said, but they just can't seem to kill off the devil. He said, they just can't kill off the devil. And I found that a fascinating comment. And it's sort of reflected in Father Martin's two research polls that he talked about, how, more and more young people are not wanting to associate with any kind of religion or any idea of God, and yet they still believe in Satan or the devil to be able to possess people and whatnot. And that got me thinking about culture in general. Certainly, in the woke culture that we talk about a lot, the extreme progressive ideologues, the wokes, they don't want to acknowledge any kind of personal God deity, right? Because they worship themselves. They are the gods. They get to decide what's right and wrong. They are the bringers of justice to these people that they've deemed oppressed, and they are the bringers of punishment and castigation and pillorying to any, white, straight, whatever. If you're one of the bad guys in their mind, they've decided all these things. So they don't want any idea of an actual God. They're deciding they're going to take on that role themselves. But they will still maintain this idea of the devil and who they vilify, right? Orange man bad, right? If you're one of the wrong thinkers, if you're not ignorant, if you disagree with them and you're not ignorant and willing to be educated, then you're the devil in their mind, right? You're evil. And they do treat you as though you were evil, even though they would say they don't believe in the devil. Many of them might. They would treat anybody who disagrees with them actively as though you were the devil, right? You're, what do? We punch Nazis, we do all these things, you're vile spit of the earth. You deserve to be canceled. You deserve to be torn down from your very existence. They treat you like the devil. They can't get away from this idea of evil. And, it's been said by a lot of people that Satan's biggest trick was to convince people that he didn't exist. And that was true for a long time. But I think now it's, people are just okay with him, I mean, what's that show, Lucifer? People actually watch that show. Like, how can you watch a show? I mean, if you don't believe in the devil, then fine. I can see why you would watch it, but you'd watch a show that would portray him as the protagonist. in a generally positive sense, even at that. I don't know. That's a whole other thing. But it struck me as how, people can't kill off the devil, and I think that has to do with. I'm going to sound very Christian-y here in a second, but I'll translate it to even those of you who aren't necessarily Christians per se. It has to do with our original sin, that we know innately that we do things that are wrong, and we should try to be better. And translating that more broadly, it's absolute good and absolute evil. There's absolute right and absolute evil. It's not subjective. It's not all relative. There is absolute right and absolute wrong. This is something that the woke can't handle, right? They don't want that. And this is why, it's what my channel is all about, looking for the aspirational heroes. It's a recognition that we are not okay just who we are. We should always strive to be better. The woke hero's journey, is to, the feminist hero's journey or whatever, is to, you're just amazing just like you are. It's other evil people in the world. It's the man that's pushing you down. It's society, it's whatever it is, but you are already amazing. You don't have to get your body healthy. You don't have to learn how to be more effective in your people skills. You don't have to do any of that. You are beautiful and perfect just the way you are, right? That's their message. And and we've always talked about how that's absurd. We should be improving ourselves. We should be looking to heroes that are showing us the way, are setting a standard, aspirational, or cathartic, motivational, showing us the way to be better there. Dr. Y, thank you for the super chat there. I appreciate it. It says people will vilify God but redeem the devil. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's you see that in today's culture as well. They don't even follow their own, they don't even, how do I want to say this? They're not even consistent, right? They really do go after Christianity first and foremost. That's evil in their minds. They will champion Islam, even though just as many, if not more people in Islam, and I realize there are different ways you can believe in Islam, and sure, but they're more practicing Islam or Muslims who would go against women's rights and so forth far more. These things that the woke claim to champion or whatever. Yet they'll stand up for a Muslim, but not a Christian, because Christians are the bad guys. They'll vilify anything that comes from a Christian idea of a God. Nefarious really gets at this. It really does. It shows the demonic thinking so evilly, so well done. It's well done. There are a couple side characters. It's an independent film, so there are a couple side characters. One in particular I'm thinking of actually is acting wasn't quite up to snuff. There's one scene with one side character. I was like, it suddenly feels like I'm watching, a Hallmark movie or something for a second. Not in the content, but just in the level of the acting. But scene was over in a moment. Then you got back. The main principal actors are just amazing. Just so amazing. But yeah, it got me thinking. And that's and what did they do to Sound of Freedom, right? The Sound of Freedom actually brought to the forefront of culture a real, true, and present evil. I mean, you can't even fathom a greater evil than selling a child. I mean, human trafficking period is bad enough. Slavery period is bad enough, but selling a child into sex slavery, human trafficking, could you even imagine a greater evil? And what did the woke do? They rejected it. No, we can't. Don't pay attention to that. No, don't do that, because that gets and I think part of it, there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is that, many of the people in power and whatnot are probably tied to a lot of the human trafficking. It's more prevalent and readily, present than a lot of people think. But I think part of it is that there's something so viscerally and plainly and obviously absolutely evil about that it gets away from their narrative that they have to be the ones to tell you what's evil. No. Don't focus on child slavery. That's a distraction. Let us instead tell you how Bob is being oppressed because his neighbor won't call him Jane. Let us instead tell you how, there's a wage gap. These are the evils that they want to, keep at the forefront of your mind. Because it's all relativistic to them, oh, relative to them, excuse me, stop making up words. Oh, sorry guys, my voice. Yeah, the "If I Were the Devil" speech from Paul Harvey, that was a good one. Nathaniel's Loseball. um mm, uh let me check and see. A lot of people were kind of tagging me there. um mm. Andre Fernandez says, "Yeah, I see you plan on watching good movies like Nefarious and Sound of Freedom. Support the good stuff and don't support the bad stuff." Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, Spidey rules. So it's like 12 Angry Men in the sense that it mostly takes place in one room. Yeah, maybe I should explain that. Aristotle was talking about tragedies or theater, Greek theater, and he had they were still the unities. The unities. There should be a unity of character. We'll talk about that later, but a unity of time and a unity of place. He said that a good story. Obviously, we can tell much more stories that break this expanse, certainly, but it's always interesting when you get a story that does follow this criteria, where you have a story that takes place in no more than 24 hours and a story that takes place in one setting. So, it's obvious how a play would work best for something like that. You can have scene changes and whatnot, but you can't have too many of them, in a play, just logistically speaking. And, and it makes for really fascinating films. Hitchcock's Rope was a good one that takes place in, the unities of Aristotelian unities. Um, you mentioned 12 Angry Men. That's another, of course, and Nefarious is one. Really, really something. Let's see. Leia Plus Size says, funny in woke culture, heroes who have a Christ-like trait, Steve Rogers, Superman, are the ones they want to get rid of. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They say that they want to get away from the hero's journey. That's problematic. The Christ story is problematic. It's problematic because there's a man at the front of it, it really is, once you start, especially if you're a Christian of any denomination, you know that the devil wants to overturn everything from God. And the basic hero's journey is something written into our human psyche. You can believe that whether you're Christian or not, or atheist or theist or whatever. It's written into our human psyche. And the woke are desperate to overturn the basic hero's journey, meaning you should live a self-sacrificing life in betterment of yourself and in protection and help of others. Oh no, that won't help us understand how much of a victim we are. A victim. This is another thing that it was Father Anuzi, I think, who's another exorcist. I think if I got his name right, he's the one who wrote a book called The Diary of A Diary of an American Exorcist. And he makes the point in there that during exorcisms, and a lot of different exorcists, talk about this, that as they're, working on the demon, trying to cast the demon out, they'll start to try to garner sympathy for themselves. And a lot of like newer exorcists, can fall into this or whatever. Like, you don't know what it's like to be me. We can't be forgiven like you. Oh, this and that, and why would you torture me like this? You're so cruel, this and that. Please let us stay, all these kinds of things. He says they play the victim. And he says the way to just bypass all of that is to say, so would you worship Christ then if you could? And immediately they'll turn around and start cussing you out, right? Because it's just a show that they're putting on. But that's the way he cuts through it. But he said that demons have this we're trying to be victims. Demons play the victim a lot. It's one of the ways that they tempt people into sin, and it's one of the ways that they try to get people to think of them. Empathize, sympathy for the devil, right? I mean, how old is that concept? Empathize with the evil, sympathize with the evil. It's really, we need to be more intelligent, more enlightened than just to think in black and white. Come on, it's the 2020s right now. We need to be more enlightened about these kinds of things. And so they really put on a victimized identity. And what do we see in woke culture? Embrace your inner victimhood, right? Everywhere. In fact, you get more street credit, in the woke world by how much more victimized you are than others and so forth. So yeah, it's really a problem. A cough drop won't help. I appreciate the thought there, Eldritch fan. uh The devil must not like you talking about him with my voice going. I'm sure, but my voice has been going for a while. This stupid sickness. Yeah, downplaying it as a QAnon conspiracy. It's absurd. It's really. I've talked about this in a previous stream, but it's 100% absurd the ways that they try to dismiss Sound of Freedom or try to stop people from paying attention to Sound of Freedom. No, 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 don't watch that. It's really weird. Leia Plus says, have you ever seen the movie Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves? Never the whole thing all the way through. I used to work at a movie theater. I was a projectionist in a movie theater, actually putting the film together and stuff like that. And back in the late 90s. And I was working at the theater when that movie was out. So I saw scenes of it going in and out, doing theater checks and whatnot. But I never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. It's got a great cast, but I'm sure it's more sort of fantasy than any kind of real theology. And I'm okay with that. I'm not opposed to just a pure fantasy that's not theologically correct if it's not claiming to be theologically correct. Like, I'm still not through with it, but I've been watching the Sleepy Hollow series because I'm really doing a lot of study into my scholarship with Sleepy Hollow to maybe do an online class of that one day. And the theology is horrid in that show, but it's not done maliciously, and it's just done to serve the fiction. I think Eldritch fan was talking about Harry Potter. Father Chad Ripperger, who is a wonderful priest, and I really look up to him a lot, as well as I do get Father Gabriel Amorth, the late Father Gabriel Amorth. They had both talked about the evils of Harry Potter and so forth. Not every exorcist talks about the evils of Harry Potter. I try and see it from their perspective in that sense. Their profession is to look at trends in society and what's drawing people to this kind of stuff. And you can imagine a child who maybe isn't socially quite all there, or even developmentally quite all there, and their parents just kind of let them get into. You could imagine them sort of getting an unhealthy fascination with spells or magic or whatnot through Harry Potter. But that's not the book's fault. That's that sense. The book's just a fiction. It's a fine fiction. It's about good versus evil. It's not there to actually present realism to you. There's no such thing as actual magic or actual witches and wizards in the sense that the book presents them, the wizarding world and so forth. It's not a thing. So I'm not necessarily against any stories that have that necessarily, but if it's something like The Pope's Exorcist, well, that was a movie that was trying to, based on the true stories of Father Gabriel Amorth, based on it. No, you were not. It was just horrid. It was horrid. I'm very much against those kind of movies. Eldritch fan for $2. Thank you. Said the benefit of a low budget. Do the best with what you got. Yeah. The unities and whatnot. Very true. Dr. Y, thank you for $7.99. Said, remember the demoniac of Gadara? Oh yeah. Those demons accused Jesus of coming to torment them. Exactly. Yeah. So it's right there from the scripture. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not just something that exorcists are saying. I mean, it's right there in the Bible too. Playing the victim, that victimhood sense, which is, and again, if you think about linking that, what I said to Father Chad Ripperger's comment about how demons want to try to make your psychology a little bit more amenable, a little bit more reflection of them. They can get you thinking about how you're the victim. Then anything you do is not necessarily your fault. And it's not necessarily wrong. And it's getting you to say yes and yes and yes to more demonic influence, which is ultimately a way to, if you were to go all the way down that road, to actually into demonic possession. But yeah, it's like I said, this is what I mean when I say that the stuff is it's scary, but in a way that sort of scares you straight. It's not like I can't sleep at night after listening to the Exorcist Files. No, it just makes me really take my spiritual life seriously. And there is a you don't want to, if the only thing that makes you a good moral person or a good Christian, if you're a Christian, is a fear of punishment, well, that's not really a real relationship. They're not really walking the moral or Christian life. But there is something to be said for the healthy respect for, and I don't even want to say punishment, because it's not punishment. Like, God's not saying, oh, you've done so many sins, so you're going to be given over to demons now. No, it's just the fact that we've given free will, and everybody, whether they know it or not, is going to choose one or the other. You're going to choose good or evil every day. You choose little bits of good and little bits of evil by your actions. And if you look at your life's trajectory, and again, you can appreciate this even if you're not a Christian or not a spiritual person, you can see your life's trajectory. You're going to either make more and more good moral decisions or more and more bad evil decisions. And those decisions that you make, so even though, in any given day you're going to make good and bad decisions, overall you should see a trajectory. You're either on your way up or on your way down, and it's just a matter of your freedom to choose that. So it's not about punishment, but it's about a fear of what I could become, and certainly experience in the torment if I didn't really mind my moral life, and make sure I was growing in holiness and so forth. Owen Lister for 999, thank you, sir. What are the biblical basics that you would recommend to have in your fictional stories? Because my goal is to tell stories that also honor God without being too preachy. I'll be heading off to bed soon. Thank you for the question, Super Chat. That's a hard question to answer. It really depends on what kind of story you're writing. I mean, you don't have to mention Christianity or God or anything in your story if it's, to be a good story, to just be good versus evil, basics of good versus evil. Certainly, if you're writing in a fantasy world or whatever that doesn't necessarily, Tolkien's a wonderfully Catholic mythology, but it's in a mythical realm where you don't have you have the wizards instead of angels, and Einar instead of God, and so forth. I think it's more about the overall morals. What are you glorifying? It's not that you can't show immorality. Immorality is real, and we should be seeing it in stories because we're going to encounter it plenty in our life. But what are you glorifying? Even if your main character does some really shady things, overall, what is your story glorifying? Is it pushing the reader to align themselves with immorality or align themselves with morality? That's where I really have a problem with some stories that are just nihilistic, or that's the problem with Snyder's Superman. Sorry, my voice is it's on borrowed time here, guys. Stream might have to end up here soon. Snyder's Superman was there was no clear inspiration at the end of that. There was no clear, yes, you should be self-sacrificing and do the right thing. People try and twist it and say, oh yeah, it was because of this and this. No, the movie bends over backwards trying to show you that it's not a clear-cut decision, guys. It's really hard, and it might not even, it's not funny. It's not fun. You might not want to do this. I mean, it was just absurd. That's the kind of that's something I would term diabolical when it comes to fiction. Ooh, Westerns. Yeah, Westerns are great with a lot of room for philosophies and morality and whatnot. Impious Imp, good to see you there, Impy. I haven't seen you in a while forever. So hello, sir. Given everything that's been discussed recently about Hermetic Gnosticism, I see it everywhere now. People in the WEF are straight up Evangelion. WEF. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at acronyms, even when they're blatantly obvious. My brain just doesn't quite get what they're meaning. But yeah, Gnosticism is I don't know which direction you're taking it there, but Gnosticism was the first heresy that arose out of Christianity anyway, which was the idea that, well, Christ was just a spiritual being. He wasn't really a physical being. He was just a spiritual being. And the implication of that in the Gnostic heresy is that only the physical's bad. The physical doesn't matter. Our spirit matters. Our spirit matters. The physical's not. Physical isn't important. It's evil even. And we still see remnants of that today. I mean, that's what's behind, transgenderism, is the idea that I can be whoever I want to be, and my body doesn't really reflect who I am. And if my body's wrong, then my body has to be changed to reflect whether I'm a different sex or whether I'm a different species or whatever, because, I alone decide who my inner spirit is or whatever. When in fact, Christianity is always taught that we're not spirits who happen to just have bodies. We are both spirit and body. That's what sets us apart from angels and demons, that we are embodied spirits. That's why in Christian teaching, anyway, you hear about the resurrection. That's very important to Christian theology, that you would have a resurrected body one day, because you can't just go out and exist as a spirit. You're not an angel. You can't go out there and just exist like that. It's a partial existence for yourself. Just a little insight into this Christian theology there for those who aren't Christian. Andre Hernandez, thank you for $5. As a Catholic, thoughts on movies like Bedazzled and Bruce Almighty? I never saw Bedazzled. Um, I love the actors in it. Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley was great. Never saw Bedazzled, so I can't speak to that. Bruce Almighty was fun. It was funny. Again, it was another example of a. It's basically a good message. It's not presenting itself as though it's trying to really teach theology or something. Just sort of a what if, good, kind of funny. Overall good message at the end. Transhumanism, yeah, that's a good word. That's the good overarching term for what I was saying there, is what is being pushed. People think they're dogs now. Yeah. Other species, like I said, it's not just transgenderism, it's transhumanism straight up. Yeah. All right, Owen. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah, I do need to feel better here. I'm probably gonna wrap this up here in the next moment or two. I'll just try to answer a few questions here because you guys hear it, my voice. It's just not going well. Luckily, actually, I do have to teach this week. I got a new semester for one of the universities I teach. Starts up, the fall semester starts up this week, so I do have to record some. Well, I have to go on live Tuesday and do some lectures. Hopefully, my voice is much better by then. Probably should kind of rest it up here. But Dr. Y for $5, thank you, said the Gnostics influenced Islam's view on the crucifixion. Both believe Christ didn't die on the cross, but was replaced by someone. Yeah, there's all kinds of creepy and weird, even variants within Gnosticism and whatnot. It's just out there. And what does that do? I mean, honestly, if you take away the incarnation of God, well, that's what's so insulting or so hard to, process for the Muslims, is the incarnation of God. How could a God become man? But this is something that's been in religions throughout the beginning of time. It's kind of written in our hearts and minds that God would become man for the sake of man. I mean, this is Heracles, this is Thor, this is all the way back, Dionysus, and even these are just Western mythologies, but it goes farther back than that. So it's kind of written in the hearts of man that this was the plan, from the beginning. And it's only what died on the cross is that which was redeemed. So if Chris, from the theological perspective there, if Christ wasn't fully human and fully God, then humanity wasn't redeemed, or no chance for redemption. Getting into some heavy theological stuff, guys. Sorry if you're not a Christian or not, into this stuff. This stream, the content of it just sort of naturally, don't worry. I mean, I usually keep specifically Christian oriented stuff to my Catholic Bible Geek channel. I never deny it or never, step around it on this channel, but the streams on this channel usually aren't, this deep into it. But because of this topic, it's just, it had to be. I am going to do an actual review of Nefarious on the Catholic Bible Geek channel, probably tomorrow night, Monday at some point. Voices rested and whatnot. Andre Hernandez for $10, thank you, said in your costumes video, you talk about the meaning of colors and the designs, like yellow meaning safety, and any books, sources you recommend for the meaning of colors. I don't have a book in mind right now specifically on colors, but there's a where is it? Let me see if I can find this real quick. Let me turn my camera off and see if I can find this one book that I'll give you as a recommendation before I tip off. Actually, I don't need to exit the stream. Just stop the cam. There we go. Let's see. Where is it? I know it's right on this shelf, guys. I'm here. I'm coming. I just need to find this book because now you put it in my head. Thought it was on this shelf. Maybe it's on another one. It's a book by a one second. I'm sorry. I can't find it right now. I will find it. I'll post, maybe I'll do it in a post or mention it on next week's stream. But a woman who works at the Vatican and actually gives tours of all the art there, she's got a wonderful book out about about Christian art and the symbolism in it and everything like that. And then she also recommended a book that I heard her recommend on the interview once, talking about the symbolism of art throughout Western culture. And it does involve a lot of colors in that. It involves a lot of, you know, other things, imagery and poses and all that kind of stuff. It's a really fascinating book, but I'll have to find it. I'll mention it on another stream. So anyway, yeah, I think I do owe you a Zoom call, Impy. You have to email me about that. If no one emails me and reminds me, it's easy for me to forget those things. But yeah, and I will have one more time this fall to do more editing, actually, because I'm rearranging my teaching schedule a little bit. Of course, the wedding is so close. It's so close. It's like is it less than 2 months, Sound Engraver, or is it Echo? How long until October 21st?
Saturday, October 21st, 2023 is in 2 months, 1 day.
2 months, 1 day, and 1 hour. Wow. That's
from convertilo.com.
Wow. Echo, stop. Wow. 2 months, 1 day, and 1 hour. That's all right. We got to go make some more money and start paying for this thing. Appreciate all the super chats, guys. But no, thank you guys for hanging out tonight. Sorry, my voice is just gone. It's gone. But appreciate it. Appreciate the talk, all the comments there. Oh, I didn't know that, General Savage. The Andrzej Sapkowicz is writing a new Witcher book. I hope it's a book like his very last novel, which ignored the ending of his universe arc and everything, the ending of Geralt's arc. I hope it's another one of those that actually just kind of goes back and tells a good, solid story. That'd be fun. I'll have to look into that. So thank you, guys. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love. And go watch Nefarious and check out the Exorcist Files podcast. It's epic. It's epic. See you later.